So we have another Patreon listener question for this Saturday night. As always, if you are interested in having a question read on the Patreon listener question of Transformer Slag, just be sure to check the description below of this segment, and you could join the Transformer Slag Patreon. We have a whole bunch of cool little perks, and we have an awesome Discord where everyone hangs out at and talks about Transformers. So be sure to check that out below and come join us on the Patreon. So, that being said, we have a question here from TheGreySkull, and he asks, this is a really good one. Really want a lot of people to participate in this one here. I was listening to one of my G.I. Joe podcasts that I frequent, and the topic of quitting the hobby came up, and was wondering that if this topic has ever crossed your mind, or have you experienced it with friends or fans within the Transformer community? Thanks again for everything, TheGreySkull. Oh man, okay, so quitting the hobby when it comes to Transformers, or even just toys in general. I mean, I don't want to just go off from Transformers for a second, but coming from the G.I. Joe community, I could see where that could be something that's a little more common. I don't know when this podcast segment that you listened to happened, but I mean, right now it looks like there might be some new life in G.I. Joe, but I mean, there was a time where G.I. Joe pretty much was kind of dead in the water for about a good year or so, where it looked like there was just nothing happening. And when it comes to Transformers, I don't think we're ever going to reach that point ever again where there's not going to be new fiction or new cartoons or new comics or new figures. There's always going to be new product coming out. So, you know, when one thing that causes people to quit a fandom or a community or a hobby is just a lack of new product. So it's definitely not that. You know, that's something that I don't think any Transformer fan could ever give that excuse, oh, there's no new stuff. Maybe there's no new stuff that interests them, but I mean, we have so much variety now that almost that excuse, I feel, sometimes doesn't come up. I mean, now that, like, between being a hardcore high-end masterpiece collector, a low-end let's put it this way, like, you know, Generations and, you know, Siege, that kind of stuff. We'll call it the Classics S collectors. The TV show media collectors, whether it be movie toys or Cyberverse toys. The more cheaper price point, you know, hyper collectible kind of stuff like Tiny Turbo Changers and BotBots. The, you know, more kid-friendly kind of stuff with, you know, GoBots and the Rescue Bots. And then you dive even into, if you're none of those things, just from a media standpoint, enjoying the movies, which kind of right now is a little bit in limbo, but we'll get back on track soon. Comic books, which there's plenty of comic books coming out. Cartoons. I think the Cyberverse cartoon's pretty darn good, if you ask me, which then supplements people buying the toy products. You know, even if you somehow don't do those, the trading card game, if you're someone who plays the TCG and enjoys Transformers through that, or, you know, there's so much that it can't be because of a lack of product. I usually feel that most people quit the hobby for one of a few reasons, and one of them is financial. They can't afford to be a regular buyer of product. You know, it could be a loss of a job. It could be a loss of a living situation where they used to have the space to buy, and now they don't even have the space, you know, to buy think about when you buy a single deluxe figure, you know, that takes, you know, 2 inches by 6 inches in your house. And if you don't have a lot of space, you know, like let's say you're just your dresser in your bedroom, you could hold maybe like 30 figures if you're lucky of a deluxe scale. So it's like, you know, if space is an issue. Sometimes, as sad as it is, and it's true, and I've seen this many times from fans, sometimes it's a significant other. Sometimes they meet someone in their life and they're not a fan of the toy collecting, and they have to make a choice. And a lot of certain kind of guys or certain kind of gals, they favor the significant other over their hobby that made them happy all those years. And that's totally fine. You know, it really tells you what is important to you as an individual. You know, so that happens too, where people meet somebody, and I don't want to name names, but I have friends in the fandom that they met somebody, and that was it. They discovered, you know, relationships, and then, you know, after years of being single, and realize that that's more important to them, and they just get rid of everything pretty much, except for like one or two figures or something. But they pretty much drop out of the community and the collecting and the hobby. Sometimes it's because they have a child. They get, they were collecting when they were in a relationship, but then when they got married, they had a kid and they need the money, and now they need the space for a room, for a baby room. So they get out of the hobby. There's a multitude of reasons that people quit. Sometimes it's just because they don't have the spark anymore. Transformers used to be interesting to them, and now they don't like it anymore. Maybe they don't like where Transformers is right now. And, G.I. Joe line is more interesting to them. Or maybe they're starting to get into video games more. Or maybe they really like Mario products. They kind of like, I always say in order to never get stale of Transformers, always have that other interest that you could always kind of lean on and then come back to. In my case, it's always been video games like Mega Man. I mean, that's where the Proto Man name comes from. It's usually Mega Man, I have a multitude of interests. Like Transformers has always been my number one thing in my life, but there's so many like close second and third places of other stuff that I do that I'm never truly bored with Transformers, because again, the hobby always keeps marching forward with new product. And if ever there is that quiet period, I could always just dive into Magic the Gathering cards, or play a Mega Man video game, or, go out and do some, street racing or kart racing, because I used to do that for years and years. So I always had something. And I've been very fortunate when it came to significant others and relationships, where no one really got in my way when it came to my hobby. As sad as it might sound coming from me, but my hobby was always more important than a person. And it's just something that I've always leaned on. But people have always asked me, like, have you ever thought about quitting? And you know what? I would be lying if I said it never crossed my mind. There's been a lot of times where I thought to myself, you look around the room and you go like, what if all of this was gone? What if like I just decided one morning, you know what? I'm quitting the hobby. I'm quitting Transformers. I'm going to sell everything. The amount of space that it would free up in this room, this room would be empty. It would just be like this big empty room. And then all the money that I would probably get from it, let's say I got 50% of what I paid for everything. Let's say I would still get that would be a huge chunk of money. That would be easily, I don't want to, I can't even spitball that number, but it would have to be at least $100,000 if I got 50% for everything that I've invested here. And then with that $100,000, I just have this big empty basement now. What do I do with it? Do I turn it into a man cave, like a gaming room, with like pinball machines? Who knows? It's something where it's like, well, what if I quit the hobby? What would happen then? And I don't know. I'm very lucky that most of my friends in real life, they don't exist because of being in the Transformer community. They're friends that I've had outside of that thing, and it just so happens that because of me, they enjoy Transformers also, or they, it's a common interest. Like, Jaws D. Wendell, I've known him my whole life practically, and when you grow up around me, you're going to see Transformers, you're going to get into Transformers. And if tomorrow I quit the hobby and Jaws D quits the hobby, we still got everything else together as two best buddies, and it's not going to make a difference. Some guys, they stay in the fandom because it gives them place, it gives them purpose, it gives them friends, it gives them community. And even if the hobby isn't doing it for them, they stay because it gives them those other things. It's so complicated. It's such a complicated question because it's so individual. It's so individual, where some people just are not in a good place for this kind of stuff. And again, it's I always say ultimately in the end, it's your goals as a person. And I'm not saying just related to Transformers, but as a whole. Like if you're a person that like you put the Transformer thing aside and you go, what's your goal in life? And it's like, I really want to just have a family and settle down and just enjoy a simple 9-to-5 life and watch TV and consume fiction. If they achieve all of that, maybe the Transformer thing isn't high priority for them. It's again, it's so individual. It's so individual that it's such a tough thing to answer. But I know so many people that have quit the hobby. And from me personally, from what I've seen, most of the time, why did they quit the hobby, or they really dialed it back to the point that they're not even like, they're not even Transformer fans anymore. They just kind of show up to the conventions just to hang out. It's usually because of a significant other. I find that that's the primary reason. They usually end up with a person who either doesn't approve of it or feels that it's kind of weird. And, you know, different strokes for different folks. I mean, I don't want to rag on the guys, but, you know, some of those dudes, you know, let's just say they're not the boss in their relationship. Let's put it that way. And yeah, but I mean, that's the long, short answer of it. I'm curious if any others have had a similar experience or they had a situation where someone quit the hobby or they thought about quitting the hobby. Again, I've thought about it, but I would never actually do it. It's me more just being hypothetical. I'd be like, well, what if I did quit it? You know, what would I know that if I quit it, I'd be just fine. There's so many other things in life that I enjoy, but I mean, at the same time, why would I? Why would I quit something that has brought me so much happiness? It's kind of going like, I'm the kind of person that's like, you could think about like my favorite meal. And if you told me like, you know, you can no longer have your favorite meal anymore. Would it kill me? Nah, you know, there's other great things to eat in the world. You know, I'll just enjoy those things, but it would kind of suck to not have my favorite meal, you know, to have my favorite, you know, your favorite flavor of ice cream, your favorite soft drink or whatever. You know, so it's the same thing. Why would I give up something that I enjoy so much? That doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me at all. It doesn't hurt me financially. I'm very smart with my money when it comes to Transformers. And I got to meet so many great people through this hobby that why would I want to quit and lose all of that? You know? And sure, I could probably gain stuff through other directions in life, but it's pretty good where I am right now. And I really enjoy, you know, the people that, you know, that I meet through the podcast and TFCon and the opportunities that I got professionally within the Transformer world because of being part of the hobby. I would have never gotten the opportunity to write stuff with comic books or to flesh out official characters through Hasbro packaging and BotCon packaging. I would have never got those opportunities had I just, you know, stuck to my guns maybe in something else. But who knows? You can't predict the future. But long story short, it's hard to say, and I really want to hear the listeners' answers on this one. So let me know what you think, and thanks again, GreySkull, for a great Patreon listener question. And once again, if you want to be part of this beautiful Patreon for Transformer Slag, just be sure to check the description below in support the podcast under Patreon, and let us know what you think.